Welcome back, everyone. We're doing something a little different today. This is the website AmericanHistoryUSA.com, and it's a feature they have called Campaign Trail. And it's basically a text-based simulation, so it doesn't look real sexy or anything like that, but it allows you to go in and take on the role as a candidate in some various historical presidential elections. It doesn't have many of them. It's got the most recent ones. But then it's got 1844, 1860, 1896, 1916. That'd be an interesting one to do. But basically, you're going to take on the role of a candidate and see if you can change the outcome of the election by answering a series of questions that kind of determine the way the race goes. So I thought it might be fun to do this because it gives us kind of a unique way to look at the history and the issues that were being debated at that time. And kind of discuss how they impacted those results and how the country might have gone in a different direction. I'll put a link in the description to this website if you want to play around with it yourself. So we're going to go to the election of 1860, and we've got, it looks like the choices are going to be Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln. This was actually a four-way race. And let's go ahead and take a look real quick, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So historically, this was a four-way race. You had Abraham Lincoln as the Republican nominee. Republican Party's brand new at this point. It's only the second time they're running a candidate for president. They ran John C. Fremont in 1856. You've got John C. Breckinridge, who at the time of the election is the sitting vice president of the United States under James Buchanan. He is from the Southern Democratic Party. The Democratic Party had a split in this election and ran multiple candidates. They had a whole big issue at their convention. So he's the Southern Democrat. He's from Kentucky, running with Joseph Lane. Hannibal Hamlin of Maine is the running mate of Abraham Lincoln. You've got John Bell, who's running as the Constitutional Union ticket, with Edward Everett as his running mate. Edward Everett would be the guy that goes on to give the really long speech at Gettysburg right before Lincoln gave his Gettysburg Address. And then Stephen Douglas, who's a senator from Illinois, famously defeated Abraham Lincoln in the Senate race. They had the Lincoln-Douglas debates. This is a time when the senators are chosen by the state representatives. It's not voted on popularly. That didn't come about till the 20th century. So it's a four-way race. So we are going to be taking on the role of Stephen Douglas, who out of the four candidates got the fewest electoral votes, but the second most popular votes. And this was a weird election because this is an election in which some of these candidates don't even appear on the ballots in some of the various states. Lincoln wasn't on the ballot in most of the southern states. And so it's just a really unique election in American history. So we're going to take on the role. We can only choose Lincoln or Douglas. Since Lincoln won, I want to try and take Douglas and see if we can't somehow change the outcome, just to see what would happen. Be interesting. So Stephen Douglas is also from Illinois, like Abraham Lincoln. Thanks to a Democratic schism, has little hope of winning the election outright. His path to victory involves throwing the election to the House, finishing in the top three in the electoral vote count. In this case, he could win or at least deny the Republicans a victory. In the U.S. presidential elections, if you're not familiar with it, we have electoral votes. Right now, you need 270 electoral votes to win. Back then, it was less. It's like 100 and some. But you win a state, you win that state's electoral votes. Now, it's a little more complicated. Sometimes they're split, things like that. But if you get one more vote than the second place guy, you get that state's electoral votes. If no candidate gets a majority of the electoral votes, then the House of Representatives votes for the president, and each state gets one vote. So even if there are 10, let's say there are 11 representatives from a state like Massachusetts, and they vote, 6 of them vote for Lincoln and 5 vote for Douglas, Lincoln wins the electoral votes for Massachusetts. Lincoln wins the one vote from Massachusetts. And then whoever wins the most states that way in Congress wins the election. So in this case, that's what we're shooting for here, is that Douglas can't really win the election outright, but he can deny Lincoln getting a majority of electoral votes, throw the election to the House, and see what happens. So that's what we're going for. Now, we've got to choose a running mate. Now, we don't have a lot of hope of getting a lot of votes in the South because there's a Southern Democrat candidate. So really, choosing a Georgian isn't going to help us. We need somebody that's going to help us in the North because we're trying to deny Lincoln the Northern vote, and that's who we're competing with him for. Again, this is kind of a Southerner from Kentucky. I don't know if that's the guy. He would attract some limited crossover support from former Whigs. Whigs, a party that's kind of gone belly up at this point. Horatio Seymour is served as the governor of New York. He's influential in that state's politics. We'd be running an all-northern ticket, but we get votes in New York, which is the largest state at this point. I think that might be the way we need to go, because I think if we get New York, it'd go a long way to keeping Lincoln from winning. All right, winner take all versus proportional. We're not going to do proportional just because that's not what happened historically. It was a winner take all type of thing. I want to keep this historical, so we'll keep the difficulty level at normal. I've never really done this before, so we'll see what happens. So we answer 25 questions, and these questions determine kind of how things go. And here's the current campaign trail. These are the states as they existed at that time. You can see how many electoral votes each state are worth. New York and Pennsylvania are the largest two. I think Ohio's probably the third largest. Right now, Ohio's winnable. 43% for Douglas, 51% for Lincoln. So you can see how they stand on the most important issues of the day. Slavery, tariffs, the Transcontinental Railroad, homesteads. Indiana's a possibility there. Looks like basically the same stance on those issues. Illinois, we're only 3% away from Lincoln in Illinois. We're actually real close to the lead in Missouri, but of course, different stance on the issues. So by winning votes in places like Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, we're probably going to sacrifice winning them in a place like Missouri. Now you can see we're not even showing up in the polls in the southern states, like 11% in Georgia, 15% in Alabama, not even showing up in Mississippi. Yeah, we're just not going to win any of those southern states. We have to go after Lincoln in the north, and there's not a lot of places we've got a chance to do that. It's really going to come down to Iowa, Illinois. It's basically these central ones here. Only 25% in New York. I would think we would have done better than that with a New Yorker on the ballot. I'm proud to share a ballot with Horatio Seymour. All right, an all-northern ticket has raised a few eyebrows, but maybe it's best given the nature of this election. All right, did that help me in New York? No, it really didn't. All right, how should your party address the slavery issue during this campaign? Now, granted, the states we're going after their votes, they're opposed to the idea of expansion. And this is one of the big arguments that's going on in the country right now, is this idea of what happens when new states enter the Union. Now, right now, Douglas is in favor of what's called popular sovereignty. Let each state choose for themselves. Let them vote. What do they want? So that's happening in Kansas, and you've got basically a mini civil war happening in Kansas. So how should we address it? The threat of a southern schism has forced our hand. We must accept the protection of slavery in federal territories. See, that's not going to help me in the places I'm trying to win votes. Make no further statements except about preservation of the Union. Popular sovereignty. I'd hoped popular sovereignty would resolve the slavery issue, but the intransigence of the southern bolters has convinced me otherwise. It must not be permitted in any new state or territory. That's Lincoln's stance, is the opposition to expansion. We're going to go with that too, because we're trying to siphon those votes from Lincoln. Since the southern vote is lost already, this just might help you a shade in those states where you can still compete. Okay, excellent. Did that help me? All right, Indiana is 5%. Illinois, we're within 1% now of Lincoln. Missouri, we lost a little bit there. Pennsylvania, we don't have a lot of hope in some of these other states, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. We really need to do better in some of these places. I just don't know if we can get there. Okay, to what extent do you personally plan to campaign in this election? I don't know how people are going to view that. It's a bold move, but I will campaign for the Democratic cause across the North. Yeah, I'll do that. There are some guffaws, but you are enough of a mountebank in the first place that you might come out ahead on this deal. Yeah, Douglas is a great debater. He's an excellent speaker. He's a small guy. He's not real big. Yeah, I mean, it seems like I would think if anybody could campaigning actively the way we see it done today was not really done historically. It was almost kind of like a faux pas. It was like looked down on as like something that was beneath presidential candidates. You had people that campaigned on your behalf. Like Lincoln didn't even go to the Republican convention. He stayed back in Springfield and had people there on his behalf advocating for him. Will you keep your name on the ballot in Oregon and California, even if doing so might divide the anti-Lincoln vote? Well, how am I doing there? All right, so we're actually winning California. We're winning we're 28% in Oregon. So what they're saying is, if I take my name off the ballot in those states and say Breckinridge wins those states, it might be enough to throw the election to the House, even though there's a chance of me winning there, because it's more about denying Lincoln those 7 electoral votes. Yeah, I think I'll take my name off the ballot in those states. I can't win anyway outright. Depending on your goals, this could be a reasonable course of action. Okay, so where's that put it now? Now Breckinridge 45% and 51%. So he's leading in those. Hopefully he doesn't lose those states. Boy, we're not getting any closer though. We were within 1% in some of those states, but we've kind of lost a little bit there. Okay. How aggressively should your party attack the Southern Democrats and John Breckinridge in this election? All right. We need to make it perfectly clear that we have no use for the secessionist splinter group, and we are a national party that truly represents democracy. Yeah, I'm going to oppose secession because I think that'll help me with the northern folks. We'll see. An appeal to sectional pride may be your only trick left. How did that affect things? It does look like it got me a little closer, got me the lead in Illinois. Breckinridge now has a nice lead in Oregon. We're getting close in Ohio. Those really are the 4 states we need to try and take to deny Lincoln the electoral vote. Did you make any deals to reward New York in your administration? Can I continue without answering that? I'm afraid that's going to hurt me in New York. But New York and the rest of the union get the message anyhow. Okay. All right. Come on, baby. Get me close in these places. What's your opinion of the formation of fusion tickets in the northern states to consolidate the anti-Lincoln vote? In other words, got all these people who are going to split the vote. Lincoln might only get 40% of the vote, but that could be enough to win the election because of the way Electoral College works. So is there a way we can deny him that vote by making deals with some of the other candidates? I will never appear on a fusion ticket with Breckinridge, but I will take my name off the ballot in the slave states. Hopefully he and Bell will reciprocate in the North. I will support any fusion tickets which can be organized, and I will withdraw my name from the slave state ballots. Okay. Okay. Let's see what happens with that. This certainly shake-ups the race. Fusion tickets have been organized in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. What did that do to the election? That gets me within 11% in Pennsylvania. Or no, it gets Breckinridge within 11%. That gets me within 1% in New York. Okay, we're 6% in Ohio, 8% in Indiana, and we're still pretty close there. Okay, interesting. Now suddenly Bell is leading in Virginia and in Kentucky, which is Breckinridge's home state, and in Tennessee. Woo, boy. Interesting stuff. We still got a long way to go here. How aggressively should your party attack the constitutional unionists and John Bell in this election? Anyone who supports the Union is fine in my book, at least in comparison to the secessionist Southern Democrats. Yeah, we're going to appeal to the pro-Union folks as much as we can in the North. Constitutional Unionists are not your biggest issue in this campaign. All right. 3% in Illinois. All right. We're 3% away in Missouri. Okay. How aggressively should your Republicans attack your party attack the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln in this election? This one's going to be important that we get it right. Lincoln and his party are abolitionists, whether they care to admit it or not. I don't believe a majority in the North would support them if this were fully understood. We have our issues with Lincoln, but our primary attack should be reserved for the duplicitous Southern Party and the ambiguous Constitutional Union organization. I think I'll go with that. We're going to not go real hard at Lincoln. A tiny sliver of Northern moderates appreciate this rare display of magnanimity. Is it enough to swing any of these elections? We're within 1% in New York. Lincoln can't win if we can take New York. With the way things are going in some of these other states, if we can get New York and Illinois, might be enough to get it done. New York's 35 electoral votes. That's huge. Okay, we're not quite halfway here yet. So the proposed constitution for the state of Kansas be accepted by Congress and Kansas admitted as a free state. Now remember, the North opposes the spread of slavery, so the people I'm after for their votes, they are going to be in agreement that this Constitution should be accepted. This action is perfectly in line with my own doctrine, which is true. He was about popular sovereignty. The will of the voters in Kansas clearly calls for admission as a free state. Okay. Didn't give me any advice on that one. Let's do one more here. What is your position on the passage of personal liberty laws by various states to flout the Fugitive Slave Act? These are the type of radical abolitionist measures that cause so many problems. I'm not going to make any statements about that. I'll stay out of it. All right, so let's see where we're at now. We are 1 point ahead in New York. We're tied in Illinois. We're 2 points back in Missouri, 6 points back in Ohio, 7 points back in Indiana. Lincoln's got pretty solid leads in more of the kind of abolitionist areas. And I am winning in New Jersey. Okay, very cool. How much should your party emphasize its support of a Homestead Act, which was passed during Lincoln's administration, the Homestead Act? Now, let's go back and look, because you can see these states that I'm trying to win slightly or strongly support the Homestead Acts. It's opposed in the South, so we want to support this to get those votes. Anyone can see we support this idea. This has been a Democrat idea since the days of Andrew Jackson. We support it completely. All right, how did that help us? Didn't really move things too much, honestly. Actually, it lost us a little bit of support. Maybe we were too strong on that one. Do you have any comment on the paramilitary wide awake clubs that have marched in support of Republicans? Kind of like some people compare them to the brown shirts, but wasn't quite like that. But every party has political clubs and supporters. There's no reason to take special alarm. We'll kind of back off on being too harsh on that one. Would you support a compromise amendment which would permanently protect slavery in the southern states, which was something that was proposed in Congress shortly after the Civil War broke out? Was an attempt at making an amendment that would codify protections of slavery, which is kind of silly because you could just pass another amendment to revoke that one. But in this case, we're going to support it for the sake of kind of saving the Union sort of thing. Let's see where that puts us. It puts Lincoln back out in front. It lost us some support in New Jersey. Boy, this is going to be so super close. I don't know, man. Reopen the Atlantic slave trade? No. I can't imagine anybody would be in favor of that in the North, especially. If any Southern state was to secede, would you use military force as president to preserve the Union? I don't know how people are going to feel about that. I could just say, if I'm elected, this thing's not going to happen. It has no relevance. You support the Union should rightly take precedence over the political issues of the day. People wonder why you aren't more forceful on this. Ugh. So maybe that wasn't the best way to go about that. I don't know, though, because now we're moving close with Iowa. We've got Ohio in range now. All right. Woo. These last 8 are going to really decide this thing. Oh, man. Should your party continue its familiar attacks on the black Republicans as abolitionists? That was a derogatory term that was used for abolitionist Republicans, and supporters of social and political equality for blacks. See, a lot of people in the North, even those who opposed slavery, a lot of them weren't quite ready to go so far as to support equality, like things like citizenship and the right to vote. A lot of people just didn't want to go that far. So I got to be careful with this one. I'm going to kind of play that one down a little bit. Let's see. That didn't help me. Did help. Help in New Jersey. Okay. Do you believe the Republican victory would result in a flood of free blacks into northern states? This was a fear people had. They're going to take our jobs. Where have you heard that before? We should hold back. It's a logical conclusion. Oh, man. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. Lincoln's just barely ahead of me still. I feel like he's going to eke out the election if I don't swing this somehow. All right, Dred Scott. This is going to be an interesting one. What is your position on the Supreme Court's Dred Scott versus Sandford's decision? Dred Scott, basically, the ruling was because Dred Scott is black, because he was a slave, he has no standing. He can't be a citizen. He has no standing in this court. It was a big, big case at the time. We join with the Republicans in denouncing this decision. We may have our differences. We can all agree this court has acted well beyond its bounds. Let's see. Yeah, I'll side with the Republicans on that one. Negativity on the Dred Scott decision is confined to the Republican vote. So it may not have helped us. All right, 1%. Still not quite there. All right, let's see what we can do to swing this thing. Do you support the further expansion of the United States into Mexico, Cuba, or the Caribbean? This is an abstract question. Yeah, I think I'll go there. With the walkout of the South, it might be best to moderate the Democratic Party line on this issue. How did that impact things? It didn't really. Again, just not much going on. How much did your party emphasize its support of a transcontinental railroad in this election? I see we don't really know how. Oh, here we go. Support. Again, opposed in the South, supported in the states I'm trying to win. Yes. Let's do it. I can't quite get there. Oh, come on. At this point, I may not have the ability to swing those states. The raid of John Brown. We'll condemn the activity. Yeah, but see, I think in the South, that would fly, but not in the North. Ooh, 1%, 2%. Oh. I need to get New York. I've got to get New York. Only 3 questions left. What position should you take on the tariff question? All right. New York supports tariffs. We definitely need to do that. Let's moderate our stance on the tariff issue a bit, given the peculiar nature of this election. Even President Buchanan appears to be changing his views. Could that be enough to swing this election? I got a 1-point lead in New York. I'm still down there. I'm tied in Missouri. As long as Lincoln doesn't win Missouri, it doesn't much matter who does. I feel like I got to get Illinois, though. I don't know if denying him New York's enough. Foreign immigration and nationalization in this election. We will attack the Republican embrace of immigration as opportunistic and disingenuous. Should I avoid it? I don't think that we have anything here about immigration. Let's focus on other things. The Irish vote will be a huge part of your election. You need to keep them energized. Yeah, there's a lot of Irish vote in New York. That's a good point. Oh, we just pushed the campaign back to Lincoln. I should have been more forceful on that one. I'm going to make one final stop in New York. I don't think we can... Yeah. We'll go to New York. All right. I don't think we did enough. I don't think we did. He needs 152. If he gets New York, it's over. I mean, New York was the one we had to prevent him from getting because that's 35 votes. And I'm thinking he's going to get it. Ugh. They're going to make me wait on New York, aren't they? I don't think... he was up 5%. I don't think I did enough to push it back. There's Ohio. New York and Illinois would be enough. Plus, he's going to get all those upper Midwest states. Yeah. The only way that he doesn't win is if he doesn't get New York. But I think he's got New York. Ugh. Might have to go back and redo this and answer that immigration question differently. We're halfway there. He doesn't have it yet. There it is. Oh, he got New York. 52-48. If I'd answered that one question differently, I probably would have had it. I won New Jersey. Oh, boy. I wonder if that would be enough to do it. If switching that one answer. I'm going to go back and replay this whole thing and change that one answer. Do everything else exactly the same and see what happens. Okay, I went back through, answered everything the same, changed my answer on the immigration issue. Let's see if that's enough to change the outcome. It was 1% with Lincoln in the lead going into the last week, and I chose to focus my campaign efforts in New York this time around. So let's see what happens. He's already at 81. He's won all the same states he won last time. The whole thing is going to come down to whether or not we can keep him from getting New York this time. Pretty much the same stuff happening. Middle South going Bell. Deep South going Breckenridge. There's Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Michigan. New York's going to put him over if he wins it. There's New Jersey for me. Come on, New York. They're making me wait. It's just like watching a real election on TV. He's at 132. He needs 20 more. They haven't popped up New York yet. I feel like that means that New York's going to go differently. There's 136. Come on, New York. Come on. He got New York again. What was the percentage? Look at that. It was 50.3 to 49.7. Somehow I got to make this work. I gotta find a way. Look at how much Breckenridge got this time around. All right, we can do this. I know I can. Okay, here we go again. This time I supported expansion into Cuba and places like that. We'll see if that makes a difference. I did pretty much everything else the same. It was still showing 50-49 in favor of Lincoln again. And once again, I said I would focus myself on campaigning in New York at the end. But I still feel like it's going to come down to the end on this one. I'm just going to skip ahead to the final results. It's taking a while to process them. Even when you skip ahead to the final results, it makes you wait. No candidate captured an electoral college majority. I did it. I threw it to the House. Woo! Congress will now choose from the top 3 candidates in the electoral vote count, which does not include me. So I threw the election to the House, but I did not get to be a part of it, so I still lose. But that's enough to prevent Lincoln from getting it. We can actually look at the results by state, so that's kind of cool. So how did we end up doing in New York? We got 50.17%. I beat him by just over 2,000 votes. That's crazy. That shows you how close these elections were historically. In fact, let's take a look at what the real results were. Here's the state-by-state result, and you can see how close this is. Now, one thing to keep in mind, a lot of people have argued, well, Lincoln only won because there were 3 other candidates and they divided the vote. Well, yes and no. I mean, maybe it's a different campaign altogether if you have just one Democrat candidate versus one Republican candidate. So you could make the argument that the very nature of the campaign changes. But if we're going strictly on the raw vote, if you give all of the outstanding votes to one of the other candidates, Lincoln does still win the Electoral College. But I would argue that if you have a one-on-one election, the votes probably come out a little differently. So, but let's look and see how close some of these states actually were. Some of the states that Lincoln won. So all the pink ones are the ones that Lincoln won. And you can kind of see, so there you have the fusion tickets there. Which color is Lincoln in this case? Lincoln's the red, okay? So here, no, he is pink, okay. All right, so right here, for example, Lincoln wins California 32% to 31.7%. California was decided by like 800 votes. So you can see how close that one was. Illinois, 11 electoral votes, decided by 12,000 votes. 13 electoral votes in Indiana, decided by, 24,000 votes. Lincoln wins Ohio by 34,000 votes. So again, you can see that, what the margin is in some of these states. Some of them super, super close. Missouri, 429 votes separating the 2 leaders in that state. 270 votes is what Lincoln won Oregon by. 4,000 votes in Rhode Island. 156 was the margin in Virginia, though Lincoln wasn't really on the ballot there. He got 1,800 votes. He was on the ballot in a few counties. So you can kind of sense how a few things here and there go a different way. But, electoral vote-wise, it was a pretty wide margin. So I don't know what you guys think about all that. And if that's something you'd like to see me try with a different campaign, there are a lot of other ones available that you can do. There's 1844, which we can show you. We can take a look and see who the available candidates are with some of these other ones here. So 1844, that's Polk. Wait, why is it showing Joe Biden? That's interesting. So 1844, you'd be Tyler or Polk in that one. You can run 1896, McKinley versus William Jennings Bryan. That was a very consequential election. Bryan was the Democratic nominee like a bunch of times. 1916, of course, is the big Woodrow Wilson one versus Charles Evans Hughes. That one might be kind of fun. I could defeat Woodrow Wilson and keep him from winning the election. We might have to try that one. That would be pretty interesting. 1948, you've got Truman versus Dewey, which was an election everybody thought Dewey was going to win. Kennedy versus Nixon in 1960, and then you get into like 68, Nixon against Hubert Humphrey. So let me know your thoughts. Use the comment section below. Did you like that? Was it fun? Was it an interesting look at history, or was it kind of boring and stupid and you don't know why I did it? Hit that like button if you want to see more. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.